hear the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Pun Kelly get caught in the fake. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor pulls the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity where they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Machine Pun Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts flow.
Hey there, and welcome to the Pun Show. Glad you could join me today. I just finished sort of watching moments of the cabinet meeting when I just couldn't stop throwing up in my mouth. Anyway, that's quite a show. Sorry, my wife just opened the door and distracted my thoughts. So anyway, let's talk about this whole second strike thing. I want to devote most of the show today to that. There's so much just sophistry surrounding the justification for this that I feel like I want to dive into it. Don't have a dashboard planned or anything. I'm just going to go through and just talk to you guys and explain where all the logical errors are. But first, I just want to mention that there's this incredibly tight district race in Tennessee that just blows my mind that it's even close. This is a district that Trump won by 23 points. And that it's like within the margin of error is insane. And so this brings up something that's called dummy mandering, and I think it's really, really something we need to pay attention to. Dummy mandering is like when you try to gerrymander a district, but it's you, in order to increase your gerrymandering advantage, you need to take districts where you have a big advantage and trim down that advantage to give you more voters in a different district. Now, the danger is that instead of gerrymandering, you do what's called dummy mandering. Dummy mandering means that you end up losing both districts because you took away too many votes from your safe district to give it to the other district, and then you didn't quite get enough votes of those to win either district. And so that's called dummy mandering. When you try to gerrymander and you end up shooting yourselves in both feet. So when you see these districts that are plus 20 pivoting to being close, like even if this is close, it spells huge trouble for the Republicans in 2026. Because really indicates that all their little efforts to gerrymander, even like if Texas comes through, they could end up actually losing seats in the states that they're trying to gerrymander seats. So pay attention to tonight. If that's got like a 20-point swing, even if the Republican wins by like 2 or 3 points, that is going to look like a landslide in 2026. That's going to also start looking like the Democrats can take back the Senate in 2026. And even it's within the realm of possibility that if you see a 20-point swing, you could see a veto-proof majority in the House, not in the Senate. There's just not enough seats up. But you could see a massive shift. So pay attention to that. The next thing is I've been watching the Honduras results because, as I was talking about yesterday, there's this whole thing with the Zeeds and like basically the destruction of humanity at stake. And right now there's a 500 vote difference with 57% of the votes in. So I'll keep an eye on that. It may be until like middle of December before we know what the results are. But let's now just shift to the focus of this show today, which is, would the real terrorists please stand up? And for all the talk about terrorists, there was a joke, Pete Hegseth made today. And I use the word joke loosely because it's not actually funny, but everybody there laughed because everybody there was like cruel and insensitive assholes. But got people posting 67 here. I don't know what that's about. Anyway, Pete Hegseth was making this joke about sorry, please shout me out. Okay, there, you got your shout out, whoever you are. So Pete Hegseth made a joke about how they can't find any more boats to bomb. And so what that means is that there's no more boats on the water. That means that like fishermen aren't able to fish because they're afraid of getting, blown out of the water. That means that the entire fishing communities in Venezuela are suffering and struggling with business. And why? Because of this manufactured thing about Venezuela smuggling fentanyl into the United States. So all these people are afraid to go and like just do their jobs and make a living. And this is also that they can get Mercado to resign. So he's literally using Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, and the Republicans are literally using they're literally killing people to terrorize them to effectuate political change in Venezuela. How is that not just straightforward terrorism? I don't care if he's got a president behind his name. It's using terrorism to effectuate political change. He's a terrorist. But that's all right. So let's go into the whole thing, and we'll start with what is a terrorist? Like, where do we get this terrorist designation from? What does it mean? What does it not mean? Okay, so there's something called a foreign terrorist organization. And foreign terrorist organization is a terrorist organization that's foreign, right? Like, but a terrorism, as I was just saying, a terrorist organization means that they're actually trying to effectuate political change through violence and through terror. This is not what the cartels are about. The cartels are not about political change. They're not trying to get political change. They're just trying to make money. They're a criminal organization, yes, but they're not a terrorist organization. But in order to carry out armed conflict with them, they need to designate an armed conflict designation that they can only do if it's a foreign terrorist organization. The armed conflict designation comes from like the Patriot Act and the laws that were passed that allowed the president to declare somebody as a terrorist organization so that he could actually defend the United States from terrorism, right? So you see people that will like try and equate Obama calling for drone strikes against ISIS, and they'll be like, oh, you were okay when that happened. And then trying to say that that's the same thing as Trump calling for boats for missile attacks on these boats. But they're not the same thing. Because one is actually, like, ISIS actually was a terrorist organization. The cartels are not actually terrorist organizations. They were just designated terrorist organizations. And they were designated terrorist organizations just by magic. Like, Donald Trump told Marco Rubio to designate them. And so Marco Rubio designated them. So then once they become once they become designated as terrorist organizations, then we can start saying, oh, okay, now we're in an armed conflict with them, even though we're not in an armed conflict with them. This is just one magic poof after another. Like, they're not in an armed conflict with us. They're not. You don't see like cartels running in into America and trying to chop the heads off American citizens, or wherever. Like, the ISIS was like filming themselves chopping the heads off of American citizens. The American citizen that the Republicans like to cry about Obama ordering the strike on was an actual terrorist that actually killed actual Americans and actually planned actual terrorist attacks. Like, that's kind of a big difference between just saying somebody is a terrorist group and recognizing that a terrorist group is an actual terrorist group. Like, can you imagine if Obama did not designate ISIS a terrorist group and just said, no, they're just our allies, we need to try to understand them, or something like that? Can you imagine? Do you think they would have felt better about that? No, this was just a case of the Republicans just screaming about whatever Obama did, whether it was right or wrong. But these cartels, they are criminal organizations. I'm not like defending cartels, and we'll get into this in a few minutes. But they're not terrorist groups. They are criminal organizations. Just like the mafia is a criminal organization. It's not a terrorist group. They may be violent, just like the mafia, but they're not terrorists. Their goals are not political. And that is a huge, huge difference. That's the difference between being a terrorist and not being a terrorist, is the politics of it. Cartels are not political organizations. When they do get involved in politics, it's only in narco states like Honduras, where they're trying to keep people in power, like Juan Orlando Hernandez, who helped them smuggle drugs and then get pardoned by the United States by Donald Trump. Okay, so we've established this first part, that they're not actually terrorist groups, right? The terrorist designation is bogus. So the legality of the first strikes is also bogus, because the legality of the first strikes was all, we're doing this to defend ourselves. These groups are terrorist groups, and we're in an armed conflict with them. So if we're just attacking them before they attack us. There's an imminent threat. There's an imminent ongoing threat. And, again, to draw the difference between like what's with ISIS, there's something that we call an imminent ongoing threat, which is like, maybe like if we don't kill them right now, like in the next 5 minutes, somebody's going to die. Like, that's somebody pointing a gun at your head, right? Now, this is like, there is a history that indicates to us that there's going to be a threat. They're planning attacks, and we know where this guy is right now, and we need to take him out to save American lives, right? So that's the case with the drone strikes. And a lot of people don't seem to understand this. Donald Trump, in his first term actually ordered more drone strikes than Barack Obama did in his whole 8 years. And he did more than Obama did in his whole 8 years, plus what Joe Biden did in his 4 years combined. He had so many drone strikes that they just stopped reporting them so that we wouldn't know how many there was. Like just in the first 2.5 years, he did more than that. So stop with your, oh, you were okay when Obama did it. As though Obama ordering drone strikes on ISIS is the same thing as ordering hits on cartel boats in the Caribbean. They're not the same thing. One was actually a threat. One actually was a terrorist organization. If you want to argue with me that ISIS is not a terrorist organization, you're free to go right ahead. But I'm pretty sure you're going to lose that argument. Okay, hang on. I got some comments here. Okay. I think it's by law, not magic. It doesn't, like, I don't even know what your distinction is, but they're not terrorist groups. Like, the law says that he can be designated, but that doesn't change it. If Donald Trump says you're a potato, you don't become a potato. Nah, bro's doing the math. This dude is simping for terrorists. No, but you'll see them in America selling drugs, which we'll get to. They strike terror in the hearts of peace. Politics is irrelevant. Excuse me, I think some cartel run countries. Yes, cartels do run countries like Honduras. And that's why we convicted the president of Honduras. And guess what? Donald Trump pardoned him. Why is it that you are worried about the countries that they run, but you're okay with Donald Trump pardoning the people that ran the countries? Like, this is a whole different set of circumstances. The people on the boats aren't the ones that are running the countries. You may not be aware of that, but we actually prosecuted under Biden, prosecuted and convicted the president of a narco state. And now you're here acting like the bad guys were the ones that did the prosecuting. So maybe back off your like little condescending attitude there, Marty. No, you said it didn't mean it got established. I don't even know what that means. Get a sombrero and head down to Mexico. So we're into the racism now. The great replacement is real. That's why they're fighting president. Yes. So, yep. See, this is it. This is it. It's all about brown people now. Yes, brown people are terrorists and drug runners, and American people are just victims of. People have tried and gotten nowhere. I blame them. I don't know what that means. They are terrorist groups. America demands drugs. Yes. Do you think it's just like who do you think MAGAs do drugs? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I think he's Juan Orlando Hernandez. He is like he's like all the MAGAs that are complaining about the drugs and then defending. There's actually the Sinaloa cartel basically is the cartel that Juan Orlando Hernandez was cooperating with. That same cartel also laundered their money through Binance. And Binance was chaired by a guy named Zhao, whom Donald Trump also pardoned. So no American president, no American in history has helped the drug cartels more than Donald Trump. And you know what? That same cartel, that cartel is the cartel that traffics the most fentanyl in the world. So if you really want to get upset about this, maybe look at your fearless leader. Drugs built nations, stop anytime soon. Sir, why are you on here today? They steal my tools too. Yes. Isn't Melania from a third world country? I don't know. I'm not going to drag Melania into this. Not saying you're wrong, but technically the data is from UK journalistic orgs, not actual. What data are you talking about? I haven't even talked about any data. And why does it being from UK-based journals matter? What I don't know what data. Like seriously, I don't know what data you're talking about. Hey Kitty, how you doing? We got the Trumpies running up in here today. I love drugs and I'm 8. He has no problem with the cartel. You mean Trump, right? I think you mean Trump. Moron, stop with feelings. Okay. I don't even know what that means. I don't even know how to read all that. The drone strikes. All right. So anyway, all right. So we've gone through all the gibberish. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the first strike. The first strike is based on this idea that these drone or that we're in an armed conflict and we're in the armed conflict because of the designation that they're terrorists. So all we're doing basically is we're shooting down these boats because Trump said it was okay. Right? That's really our evidence. That's actually what our basis is. They're terrorist groups because Trump said so, not because they're terrorist groups. And then we're in an armed conflict with that terrorist organization because Trump says we're in an armed conflict, not because we're actually in an armed conflict. Like there's been no like hostilities fired between cartel soldiers and U.S. troops. Like there actually being an armed conflict is not a thing that is happening. And I looked it up, and in the last 25 years, do you know how many Coast Guard sailors have been shot and killed by cartels or shot at all by cartels? Guess how many casualties we have from boarding smuggling ships. And I think we've boarded like 1,200 ships. We have not had a single injury or fatality of anyone from the Coast Guard boarding cartel ships. So this idea that there's this big dangerous boat that we're in trouble, we can't just board them. We have to blow them out of the water because they're this high risk thing that we need to defend ourselves from. It's just pure fiction. It really is. There is actually no reason that we can't just board the ships. All right. So the idea that we're boarding the ships in self-defense is a pure myth. And we've been doing it for 40 years. And it's actually effective, right? Like, so like I was saying, I was going to get to this. When we board the ships, one, we confiscate the drugs. It doesn't go into the water, where, by the way, it poisons the marine life. Number two, we actually catch the people that are smuggling the drugs, which means that we can try them and prosecute them. It also means we can flip them. Most of our intel for figuring out where more ships are coming from and more drugs are coming from and how we can go up the ladder comes from confiscating drugs or from arresting those drug smugglers. So we're losing our intel to actually catch more drug traffickers when we blow them out of the water. We're actually hurting the effort to stop drug smuggling when we just blow those ships out of the water versus interdiction and capturing them. So if your goal is to stop the drug smuggling, shouldn't the thing that is most effective for stopping the drug smuggling be the thing that we are, that we're trying to do? And furthermore, you always hear people talking about drugs and or about guns, right? Oh, gun control laws aren't going to do any good because the criminals will find a way. Well, you know what? Cartels find a way. They're not just going to go, oh, whoops, we're not going to traffic drugs anymore. They'll find another way. It's not like this does not do us any good, blowing them out of the water. The other thing that's important to know is that 75% of the time, it's actually a little bit more, 77% of the time, we board ships. It's only 77% of the time that we actually find drugs. And that's last year, which was the best year on record for this. So that's the highest percentage we've ever gotten, which, by the way, was under Biden. That means like a quarter of the time that we board a ship or we board one of these boats and we don't find any drugs. They don't actually have drugs on them. So that means that if we've bombed 22 boats, run the math if you know how to do statistical probabilities, there's about a 99.8% chance that we've killed innocent people, because statistically, the chances of getting it right 22 times in a row are infinitesimal. Okay, sorry, D. Vincent. So anyway, we are killing innocent people and we are hurting drug smuggling doing it, or hurting our efforts to stop drug smuggling doing it. And, and then all you get is, like people saying stuff like, I can't listen to you anymore. Like, why not? You notice they never actually have actual criticism based on facts. Okay, so Seth has a question to ask me. Ask away. El Chapo had submarines years ago. He also, was a big. He's the main one that helped dig the tunnels to go under the border. Like, these people find a way. Just like, you want to talk about they find a way with guns. You don't think they're going to find a way with drugs? Which do you think makes more money? And which way do you think the guns are traveling, by the way? They're not manufacturing guns and trafficking them up here. Trump doesn't know anything, really. Like, Trump put a tariff on Canada saying that it's to stop the flow of fentanyl. He literally did not know who was bringing in the drugs. Otherwise, he wouldn't, because it was like less than 0.2% of the fentanyl comes in through the Canadian border. So don't tell me Trump knows who's bringing in the drugs. He obviously does not. Stop illegal immigration is killing the Native Americans on the border of America and Mexico. You are a dumbass. I love it. Or you're a dumbass. Y-O-U-R, a dumbass. Read a book. Stop watching Fox. Okay, so I think he was calling somebody else a dumbass. But don't become a victim in the war on apostrophes there, James. Can you make something nasty in your hand and eat it like a sandwich? No. He pardoned the 400-ton drug smuggler. Yes, he did. I love listening to you. I love talking. If you are in Tennessee, make sure to go vote blue. Yes, I brought that up already. America keeps buying it. And that's the other thing about the whole drug issue. The thing about the drug issue is it doesn't, like, stopping the importing it doesn't really matter much if people are still doing it, like, how about we work on both ends of it and just not with the. Didn't I already shout you out once? Anyway, hi. I don't know what Silge. Love one, Trump JD. I don't know what that means. Okay. All right. So trying to pay more attention to the comments today, but I'm gonna try and focus a little bit on the back to the idea of the legality of the first strikes, back to that. So the first strikes, like there's all this talk about the second strike, and I feel like in the wake of all of that, we have lost sight of the fact that the first strike was actually illegal too, especially on this boat, which had 11 passengers on it. And if you're trafficking drugs, you're not going to fill the boat up with passengers first. Like the very fact it had 11 passengers indicates to me that it's probably not filled with drugs. And then when you look at just the statistical probabilities of things, probably at least 5 or 6 of these boats weren't carrying drugs at all, which means we're killing innocent people. And there's, all kinds of indications of this. When journalists have gone and interviewed, there's been a couple of cases like where there was a submersible where maybe there was some drugs involved, but there's also cases where it seems like there weren't any drugs involved, where these were just ordinary fishermen who were just going out for regular work and just got blown out of the water and murdered. Which is why we have laws about these things, because you shouldn't be killed because you're suspected of being a drug trafficker, because you're never going to get a chance to say, oh, wait, I'm not trafficking drugs, I'm just fishing, right? And so one thing I see a lot is this false argument that fishing boats don't have 4 and 5 motors or 3 and 4 motors, which they actually do, because some of the fish that they have to catch are like way out. They're like 300 miles offshore, and so then once they catch the fish, they can't putter along with a little 2-engine boat hoping to get back someday. Otherwise all the fish will go bad that they went out to get. So they have to get faster boats. They get these go fast boats so that they can get back to shore in time before the fish rot. The other thing is that when you're 300 miles out to sea, you don't want to get stuck out there with your only engine not working. So yeah, and it's not like these 23 boats or 22 boats, it's not like they stopped drugs coming in, right? There's still drugs coming in. Anybody that thinks that there's a drug shortage right now, I haven't done any drugs in 35 years and never really did a lot of them. Just a little experimenting when I was in my 20s, but actually when I was in my teens. So no one said drugs are not coming in. This is not about drugs. No, this is about politics. And for every crime he has a lie. I agree. Yeah, I think that there's something about the oil. I'm not quite sure what his fixation on Venezuela is. But yeah, he's got some weird ulterior motives. So anyway, so I just want to bring back the first strike was that happened for a reason. There was a reason, or that the first strike was still illegal. I think we've moved on from the first strike when we start talking about the second strike was definitely illegal. I don't want to dismiss the first strike also being illegal. Even if you were to take everything that Trump's designations were true, they weren't actually an imminent threat. They weren't an ongoing imminent threat. The idea that someday somebody might overdose with some of the cocaine that's on their boat, does not mean they're an imminent threat, because again, you can just interdict, you can just intercept the boat, board it, confiscate the drugs, prosecute the smugglers, and move on. Right there, it's this is the way, as the Mandalorian might say. So the first strikes are illegal. Now I want to move on to the second strike. Okay. If the first strikes were illegal, the second strikes were even more illegal. The second strikes, well, the second strike, here. First of all, this hors de combat, it's, the T is not pronounced, by the way. I don't know French, but I've kind of looked up how to pronounce this. It's not hors de combat or something. It's hors de combat. At least that's as close as I can get. I don't speak French. But anyway, it means out of combat. And that applies universally. And so, along with all of this other stuff with the armed conflict designation and all of that, there's something that's called a non-international armed conflict. Okay. And that means, and I'm like, was like wondering, what is that supposed to mean? And like, we're in international waters. How can we be a non-international conflict if we're not in national water, or if we're in international waters? So, because I was like confused with non-international versus international. But apparently it has nothing to do with international waters or not. A non-international combat is combat between a state and an entity that's not a nation. So like between ISIS and the United States, like that was a non-international armed conflict. That was actual non-international armed conflict. That's what gives people that's what gives the president the authority to like call in drone strikes, where we're in a non-international armed conflict. That's why you could call in drone strikes on ISIS, for instance. And that's what Trump is saying gives him the authority to call in these strikes on these boats, that we're in this non-international armed conflict. Except the problem is we're not in an armed conflict. There's a designation that we're in an armed conflict that's based on them being a foreign terrorist organization, right? But again, all of this is, why are they a foreign terrorist organization? Because Trump said so. Why are we in an armed conflict designation? Because Trump said so. Why is there a non-international armed conflict? Because Trump said so. All of this, their whole logic just comes down to because Trump said so. And that is not a power you want to give to the president. You don't want to just say you can just designate somebody a terrorist group, then just declare that we're in an armed conflict with them, and then make it out that they're like in an armed a non-international armed conflict. Okay, so then on top of all that, there's this thing that Trump made up called a unlawful combatant, which doesn't exist according to the Geneva Convention. There's either combatants or there's civilians. There's no such thing as a non-combatant or an illegal combatant, there's no such thing as an unlawful combatant. That just doesn't exist. That is a designation that was made up, And so when you see people are like, well, they're terrorists or they're pirates, that doesn't exist. And they weren't combatants anyway. They weren't combatants. They weren't combating. They weren't pointing at guns at us. What were they going to do? Throw the cocaine across the ocean and hit somebody in the face and cause them to OD on it? Like, they're not combatants. They are not imminent threats. They are not actually going to kill somebody. Any more than a gun manufacturer is going to kill somebody because somebody's going to use their gun to kill somebody. That's like calling like calling in a raid and you go in and blow up a gun factory because they were unlawful combatants. Yes, people may eventually overdose on that cocaine, but there's no evidence that there's cocaine at all, or that anybody is ever going to overdose on any particular bag of that cocaine. And we can still confiscate the cocaine if we just interdict the boat. Do you follow me? Like, so, all right, we got some. See, so it's who is in charge of the military? They aren't shooting back. Yeah, they don't even. We don't even know if they had any guns to shoot back with. Like I said, not a single national or not a single Coast Guard person has been shot or wounded or injured at all in any raid ever. Like, it just doesn't happen. Richard says bullshit. I don't know exactly what he was bullshitting. It's overkill. Who is in charge of the military? I don't know, but he's probably drunk. Overkill is underrated. It never happened. It's been debunked. I don't know what never happened and got debunked. Why are Democrats for illegals, criminals, and terrorists? Why are you for illegals, criminals, and terrorists? You're the one that voted for an illegal. You're the one that voted for a criminal. You're the one that voted for a terrorist. Maybe stop voting for Donald Trump, and then we can solve all three of those problems. So why are they out there with drugs in the boat? We don't know that they're out there with drugs in the boat. We just know that somebody said there were drugs in the boat. And being out there with drugs in a boat is not a capital offense. And no, Trump is not the only person on earth that will do something. We've been doing something for the last 40 years. That's why 1,300 boats have been boarded. That's why we've confiscated cocaine. That's why we've actually arrested and prosecuted drug smugglers. That's why we arrested and prosecuted Juan Orlando Hernandez, who then Trump pardoned. So if you're really against the drugs, if this is really what bothers you, then why are you supporting Trump? Like, if the drugs are really the issue with you, why are you for the man who has pardoned one of the biggest drug smugglers that has ever been sent to prison after only a year? Like, I imagine that you're just going to do what MAGAs always do, and you're going to either just kind of shout back some kind of insult about libs or whatever. But I would really challenge you to think about this. Okay, Joe? Can you do that? Can you think? Can you think? Trump and Hegseth committed war crimes and murder. They did. Really, dude? You are retarded? Okay. But you still, if I am, what does it say about you that your best rebuttal is a slur? Like, you can't actually contend with me on the facts. You can't actually articulate a response that has logic behind it. And so you just resort to a 5th grade slur. What does it say about you if I have mental deficiencies and I'm still outsmarting you? I don't know whose country you're in. I know I'm in my country. Don't justify. You're the one justifying Joe peddling. I'm not justifying it. I'm saying arrest them. I'm saying prosecute them. You're saying pardon them. Boo-hoo. See? Yep. Boo-hoo. Whiny libtard. See, this is the MAGA hive mind at work. They hear facts and they just get like all panicky and all aggressive, and they just like start wigging out, and they just start throwing out like all the slurs and insults they remember from when they were in 5th grade. Defending Vincent, again, you're the guy that voted for a guy who has pardoned both ends like of the fentanyl cartel, the smuggling end and the money laundering end. And you're like, Donald Trump pardoned them. If it really bothers you, Donald, I apologize for your name, but if that really bothers you, if fentanyl really bothers you, why are you supporting the man that has pardoned the people that have aided the largest fentanyl smuggler in the world? Like, honestly, ask yourself that question. Because, like all the insults and everything, they don't change anything. But maybe you could like think about it, like use your mind. A diversity, equity, and inclusion point, you could have done better than Kesbreath, who didn't earn it. Actually, you know what? Like this whole thing, someday I'm going to talk more about the DEI thing. I don't like the idea of, like, actually, I think if we had DEI in place, Kesbreath would have never been hired, because we would have actually considered the entire pool based on its merit instead of resorting to just the guy that said things that Donald Trump thought were cool on Fox News. What did he get convicted of? Are you talking about Hernandez? Got convicted? Are you serious? Like, did you know there's a thing called the internet where you can like Google these things and find out? But yeah, he smuggled 400 tons of cocaine, and he accepted bribes. He had the Honduras military. He used the power of that to like gun down opponents of the Sinaloa cartel. He had journalists executed. He has all kinds of evidence against him. There were just all kinds of witness testimonies against him, including his own brother. There's ledgers that have his initials in it. There's audio tapes. There's videotapes. Do you really not know this? There was a 10-year investigation. A 10-year investigation, by the way, which continued all through Trump's first term. Started in 2015, went all the way to 1924. The years 2017 to 2021 were included in those years. It was a 10-year investigation to get this man. It was a 3-day trial and less than 1 day to deliberate, which for a trial of that scope was incredibly fast. That the jury came back, and by the way, it was a jury found him guilty. The American judicial system actually at work. See, this is what I say. In America now, if a trial convicts you and you're a convicted drug trafficker, you get a pardon. But if you're on a boat and you're an accused drug trafficker, you get a missile. That's not the way it's supposed to be. We had a trial. He was convicted. And you don't like the results because Donald Trump told you he was treated unfairly. But it's perfectly fair to just bomb people out of the water because they happen to have too many motors on their boat. I don't know what that was supposed to be. Are they in the waters? I don't know. Show the drugs and we'll shut up. Yes, I agree. So Mo Down, I'm done with you. Not our waters. Bleeping idiot. You see, you notice, I'm going through. I told myself I'm just going to go through all the comments today. I'm going to show them no matter what. And this is the literacy of MAGAs at work. I haven't been screening out anything. Everything they say is just an insult because they do not have the mental acuity to actually articulate a response, because it's just the what is it? It's not, we talk about cognitive dissonance, but that's actually not what it is. Cognitive dissonance is the discomfort that happens when you find out new information that contradicts what you actually believe. It's more like cognitive rejection or something like that. They rather than have the new information and the discomfort, they just reject the new information. but I'm the idiot. Like, this is your way. This is just like your reflex. Kind of like your MAGA reflex is just to insult somebody that told you something you didn't already know, or that contradicts something that you already believe. Why are Democrats aligned with Jeffrey? See, so now it's just inviting, just like whatever. I don't even, Donald Trump was the one that was having sex parties with Jeffrey Epstein, dude. POTUS is the commander in chief. Yes. Nobody's arguing that. Pussy getting heated. Dude, I can guarantee you have never been around a warm pussy. We need to get that man a crown. Challenge these nuts. That guy that was pardoned, never SM. I don't know what SM. I charge extra for thinking. Trump tard. What do you think about Trump? And Trump deporting people is not really part of the agenda for today's show. TDS is overtaking your mouth. Is your name Roger? I used to bang a Roger. Good if they are illegals. You eat bofa. I don't even know what that means. All caps. Facts. Oh, queer. Make me Sonola great again. Makes. Yeah. That's, I assume, what you're referencing Trump there. What is a woman? Something I'm sure you will never find the answer to. Why are no men joining the military under Biden? This is not true. One, MAGA is a party of pedophiles. I don't know if everybody's a pedophile, but they're like certainly pedophile adjacent at this point. Ask yourself, are you gay? No, I'm not. And I wouldn't be ashamed of it if I were. Why do you think that being gay is a pejorative? Are you in the closet? Maybe you should ask yourself that question. Roger, call me. You are always the smartest. And sex ed, Rush. All right. So anyway, I'm just gonna. Is there anything that's like just not something a stupid person says? Sorry, there's just so many. I'm getting like lit by Broben Misslet. Huh. Was that meant to be an insult? Is he the one I'm thinking of? Oh no, I'm thinking of another guy. I'm thinking of the lawyer, not Mark Levin. I think Mark Levin might be a MAGA dude. Is Mark Levin a MAGA dude? I don't know. Their programming doesn't let them observe. This is what I'm saying. They just like, I tried, right? See, MAGA reflex, you mom has that. Like, really? Like, that's the, like, what does that even mean? Bofa these nuts. All right. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. All right. So where were we? So then the legality, the second strike. So, okay. There's this whole thing going back to where I was before I got distracted by the comments again. The second strike was predicated on these, the first strike was predicated on there being, terrorists that are in conflict. And then the second strike, you have people saying that doesn't apply, like the Geneva Conventions don't apply because these are unlawful combatants. But the Geneva Convention does not specify anything called unlawful combatants. Like, this is a thing Trump made up. There's no such thing as you're either a civilian or you're a combatant. Criminals are not unlawful combatants. They're civilians. Like, the UN has designated that cartels are criminal organizations like the mafia. They are not terrorists. They are criminal organizations. And We have signed on to that agreement. We have agreed as a nation by treaty that there's no such thing, or that cartels are criminal organizations, right? In order to change that treaty agreement, the president of the United States has to go through the Senate and get that approved. That's the way that the Constitution states things. Treaties have to be approved. Breaking treaties have to be approved. We, by treaty, have determined that drug cartels are criminal organizations. And yes, they're criminals and they deserve to be prosecuted, but they're criminals. They're not terrorists. They're not combatants. So if you accept, there's one of two things has to be true. They're either combatants or they are civilians. If they are civilians, then killing them the first strike was murder, and killing them with the second strike was murder. If they're combatants, then killing them with the second strike was murder, and killing them with the first strike was probably murder. But regardless, at a minimum, you're talking about a war crime and the most severe of war crimes. That's not just a hypothetical. It's even in the Navy's own journal of what's an example of when to not kill somebody would be an unlawful order, and it's shipwrecked survivors. Like every single seaman learns that in their training. You can't kill shipwrecked survivors. This is not something that is like some sort of gray area. Regardless of whether you're a combatant or a civilian or a drug smuggler, you can't just go around killing people that don't present a threat to you. Self-defense only applies if they're actually a threat. What are they going to do? Throw boat pieces at you? How are they a threat? They don't have a gun. They're not firing at you. And then some people bring up, well, what about when this other two people were rescued? You know what happened there? On the same day, that's when, I can't think of his name, the other admiral refused to take the order and instead resigned. That's the day that they were rescued. And the day that they announced that these survivors survived and that they were rescued is the same day that the admiral resigned. You think that's a coincidence? No, those survivors were probably ordered to be executed also, but in that case, you had an admiral that refused to follow the order. And refused to follow the order enough to end their career over it. So no, I don't accept that because other survivors survived, that means that like the first one didn't happen. And Kegs Breath can talk all he wants about how he didn't do it and it was all the admiral's fault. Okay, so if you didn't do it and it was all the admiral's fault, why didn't you stop it? You said you were there watching. You said you watched the whole thing, and that's how you knew for a fact they were drug smugglers, even though you don't know who they were. And like there's no drugs visible in the imagery. How did you know? What did you see that we didn't see? That you know that for a fact that they were drug smugglers, even though there were 11 people on a boat that didn't leave room for drugs. But you knew they were drug smugglers, but you didn't know about the second strike. Would you go potty? Took a little bathroom break, and that's when it happened? So how did you know about the first strike and watch the first strike and not watch the second strike 5 minutes later? I'd really like to know that. I would really love for somebody in the media to ask him how he didn't know. And then if he didn't know, why didn't he know? And if he did know, why didn't he stop it? There's so many follow-up questions that aren't being asked. I touched, notice Kelly Scaletta won't touch Israel. I've talked a lot about Israel. I've got a whole bunch on my channel about that. I just not the topic of today. So, like, that doesn't mean I don't want to talk about it. But yes, the ceasefire is a joke. Since the ceasefire started, over 1,000 Gazans have been killed or wounded, and like 356 have been killed. There's only been 8 days where Israel wasn't actually attacking Gaza. They're only letting in, I think the number is 121 trucks a day when it's supposed to be up to 600. So they're starving Gazans to death, and they're still murdering Gazans. The genocide is ongoing, and the ceasefire is not ceasing fire. So I absolutely detest what Israel is doing. So don't tell me I won't touch Israel. I'm just talking about something else right now. Yeah, now he's claiming he didn't see the second. That's what I mean. Like, did he go to the bathroom? Why didn't you see the second strike, Peter? Why didn't you, like, when you came back and found out about it, why didn't you, like, immediately have that admiral arrested? Do you really expect me to believe Pete Hegseth didn't know about it? Because I don't think anybody with half a sense knows about it. You sound like a liberal. We can deport you back to Africa. Yeah, that's good. I bet you wonder why people call you a Nazi too, don't you, Michael? Drug smuggling boats are very obvious. No, they aren't. They aren't very obvious, dummy. That's why we get it wrong 25% of the time. Even people that are trained to identify drug boats only get it right 75% of the time. 25% of the time, we board drug boats. There's no evidence that they are drug boats. So don't just regurgitate what you learned on Twitter from other people that don't know what they're talking about. Yes, they are looking like fishing boats. That's why they're there. They literally are trying to camouflage themselves to look like fishing boats. They exactly use fishing boats. And the same benefits to a fishing boat, being able to move fast. If you've got like fish that are rotting, you don't want to sit and have all your fish rot on the way home. Having a lot of cargo space, exactly what you want. Because you want to be able to, like, catch fish. All the advantages that you have in a drug boat, you want in a fishing boat, especially if you're going out, like, way out. It's called artisanal fishing. And it's like for fishing way off the shore, like 300 miles. And most of the boats that you see that are like that are actually fishing boats. Yes, most of the smuggling boats are also those same kinds of boats. But that doesn't mean most of those boats are are drug boats. So don't correct me with wrong information. Look it up. Yeah. Venezuela has a lot of oil and they were fishing. Stop the killing. Can't watch our murderous strikes. These are innocent until proven humans. And that's true. And that's, like, to me, like the cavalier attitude that MAGAs have towards human life, you know, the pro-life crowd. Suddenly it's like, oh, well, they shouldn't have been smuggling. Well, when did smuggling become a capital offense anyway? And number two, how do you know they were smugglers? Donald Trump told you to? Why is Donald Trump said it was so enough ground to kill people? They were not fishing. Says the guy who has no idea what he's talking about. Like, I get it. You have an ingrained opinion and very little information. So it's hard for you to accept that maybe you don't know what you're talking about. But that's probably why you have the red hat on top of your head. Boob. Okay. Haven't had much experience with those either, have you? Making America a disgrace to the world. Donald J. Trump. Seems like a left channel. See, so yeah. Arguments about just none is none of these. If I saw a MAGA come on here and actually articulate an intelligent response to anything, I would actually invite you on the show to have a discussion with me. But this is just seems like a left channel. It's just dumb. You know they were running drugs in a small boat. How? Okay, he's asking. Making abusing girls acceptable. No kings. Yeah, right. I'm with that one. So we got some allies coming in here now. Go to the gym, girly boy. Okay, yeah. This is a page off Project. Yeah. There's I'm gonna have to do something on Project 2025 sometime soon. Supporting Donald Trump 30%. Those Trumpsters are already gone mentally. Look at the footage. Look at footage of what? Look at what footage? Of boats blowing up? There's no cocaine in those videos. The Coast Guard is more than capable to, and that's they've been doing it. They've done 1,300 of them in the last 25 years. That's how we have gotten most of our intel. And by the way, when I talk about the intel, I forgot to mention that England is no longer sharing its intelligence with us. Canada is no longer sharing its intelligence with us because they're afraid we're killing innocent people and committing war crimes, and they don't want to participate in that. So we're actually hurting our counter drug operations, our counter narcotics operation are being damaged by doing this. We're losing the people we could flip. We're losing intelligence from other countries that help us. Narcotics are coming from Mexico. The fentanyl is coming through Mexico, not from the fentanyl starts in China, and then they send it to Mexico, and then in Mexico they smuggle it over the border through American citizens. Like 90% of the fentanyl that gets smuggled is smuggled by American citizens. Because why, like, doesn't that make sense to you? Right? Like, you're going to have Americans smuggled over. Like, if every single Mexican is going to get inspected, you're not going to give it to Mexicans, right? They're using the war on drugs as a BS cover-up. Venezuela has a lot of... I agree that the Venezuela thing is probably more about the oil. I'm not sure about the Israel or about the Gaza Palestine collection. Are you saying that Trump is trying to overthrow Venezuela, I guess would be a good way to put it, because the Venezuela is supporting Palestine? That's I'll look into it. I'm not privy to the connection between Venezuela and Palestine, but it's interesting. Aren't they spying? Now, do you think they just watch every single boat that's on dock 24 hours a day? No, they're not. They're not loading. They're not spying on the boats to see if they're loading drugs on them. Again, this is why, at best, the Coast Guard only gets it right 75% of the time. There are a lot of times where they thought there were drugs and there weren't. It's not like they're right 3 out of 4 times, which is, pretty good if all you're doing is boarding them, and then if they don't have any, letting them go. But when you're bombing them out of the water, that means 1 out of every 4 boats you're bombing out of the water is just innocent fishermen. So we've killed innocent people, like 25 innocent people. Maybe we got a few drug smugglers. But again, that's not a death sentence. It's not a capital offense. And it's also hurts our anti-narcotics campaign, because instead of flipping those low-end drug smugglers and getting bigger fish, we're just killing them. And we're poisoning the water in the meantime. Okay, somebody said that's not true. I don't know what that is or why it's not true. Try critical thinking and what's obvious. That's what I'm trying to do. Groupthink, following the masses. Know thyself. Should be one word, thyself. Keep being true to yourself and spreading the light. One love. Okay. Many of those boats are also used for transport among the islands. Yes. Well, yes, it does. I don't know what it is. Hey, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday to you, Donald or Daniel. Okay, so Cheryl says that Joyce is a horrible person. Maybe you need to find Jesus. That is probably not a thing Jesus would say. Like, Jesus didn't go around calling people horrible people. What Jesus did is he called out the people who went around calling people horrible people. So, like the Pharisees, he condemned the Pharisees because the Pharisees thought they were better than everybody else. So he would condemn the Pharisees, but he forgave the sinners. So maybe you should meet Jesus yourself. But you do. Oil is what it's all about. Let's go. No, they don't. Then why do we get it wrong 25% of the time? Like, do you get what I'm telling you? They actually record this. Like, they actually track this. This is not just something I made up. You can go on the big wide internet and look it up. Does the Coast Guard ever get it wrong about drugs being on boats? They do not 100% know which drugs have boats or which boats have drugs. They don't. Like, otherwise they would get it right 100% of the time. But if they get it right 75% of the time, they don't 100% know, do they? That's how logic works. Do you know what 100% means? It means 100%. It means all the time. Doesn't mean 75% of the time. Are you a fent dealer? No, I am not. Apparently, you need him too. You're calling me a name. I didn't call you a name. I just pointed out a fact in the Bible. We don't know if they're fishing or not. Left wing, right wing, broken wing. No, you wouldn't. Whatever. I'm not calling you names, Joyce. Cartels have submersibles. They don't need boats. What do Democrats do that's better than Republicans? Govern. The boat summary. I'm America first, actual MAGA, and I don't support Trump anymore. Well, thank you for coming around. You said I was so. You're a KFN moron. Oh, okay. I guess I'm a moron who actually has sex. Well, if the shoe fits, Joyce, you don't know so like you're back to insulting people, Cheryl. You don't know your own fact. But I do. 75%. That was last year. 77% of the times that the Coast Guard boarded ships, they found drugs. That was an all-time high. It's usually around 65 to 75%. You can look it up. You not knowing the fact does not mean I do not know the fact. An idiot. See, it's your size. Where is all the fentanyl coming from, and why have we had a fentanyl epidemic the past 6 years? We've had a fentanyl epidemic going back more than 6 years. The reason it only started, relatively recently is because fentanyl was only, invented relatively recently. It's actually the last couple of years, it's actually started to go down, or at least fentanyl overdoses have started to go down because we actually have been trying to combat fentanyl rather than doing theatrics. No intel on drugs in these boats. Rubio wants to have Trump get Venezuela oil, then he'll declare peace. I'm going to have to do tomorrow's show on Venezuela. Sorry, you're an ignorant troglodyte. I don't know who's the ignorant troglodyte. Am I the ignorant troglodyte or somebody else? Because, I'm always happy to learn. If you have new information for me, I'm happy to consider it. Remember 2000 England when shared intelligence with us? And we did 10-year-long war? Yes. I remember being against that war. DJT just pardoned former narco-terrorist president? Yes. Juan Orlando Hernandez. We've talked about that. Stupid, the drugs float all around. Stupid, the drugs float all around the day. But that's not true about Canada. It's about terrorists not killing the drug runners. Don't even know what all that is supposed to be. It's like you glued two sentences together and shook them up and then just formed a magic word pile. I don't even know what like something to do about Canada and the terrorists, something not being true, something about drugs not floating. I don't know what all that means. I know that Donald Trump said that the reason that he was putting the tariffs on Canada was because of fentanyl, and that fentanyl does not come over on Canada. I know that the drug, when you hit the drugs with the missiles, they don't float around. They like get blown up, and then the cocaine goes into the water where it gets like absorbed by the marine life and eaten by fishes, and then the little cocaine fish get eaten by the big cocaine fish, and then the big cocaine fish get eaten by a cocaine shark, which, by the way, is my idea for the new movie. The sequel to Cocaine Bear should be Cocaine Shark. That would be a cool movie, right? Like, even if you don't agree with my politics, Cocaine Shark would be a cool movie. Fentanyl is made in the US too, but I think there's like a certain component of it that's made in China, and that's usually what they're talking about. Install a puppet regime. Trump is saving America from what? I don't know. But again, like just never anything substantive from a MAGA. It's always just, you're an idiot. Trump is a god, blah, blah, blah. There's no actual intelligent response from a MAGA ever. Like, I would just love to, one time my wife asked me, how come you never what would you do if you ever met with a Republican that knew as much about politics as you do? And I told her that's not fair. And she says, why not? And I said, because if I met a Republican that knew as much about politics as I do, they wouldn't be a Republican. So anyway, they lost control of the drug trafficking. The government lost control of a few years back. They need the drug trafficking. If I don't know what you're trying to talk about. Okay, so now Cheryl's back. Is she still? Okay. They need a way to continue financing the wars. Oh, by the way, this is, speaking of this, like, have you considered how much it's costing us to like bomb all these boats out of the water? Each time we bomb a boat, it's like a couple of $100,000, but that's just for the missile. And then to have the aircraft carrier out there, or to have the Navy ship out there, I forget which one it is. It's like costing like $500,000 a day or something. Anyway, I looked into it. It's cost us like $5 billion so far to carry out this little operation, versus just like confiscating the drugs and arresting the people when they come in. We're spending like billions and billions of dollars on this while we're cutting food stamps. We can't afford to feed our own people, but we can afford to blow up fishermen off the coast of Venezuela. Yeah, see, this is another just nonsensical. No, I've never said drug smuggling is good because Trump says it's bad. And again, I'm not the one that's pardoning drug smugglers. And I never said that drug smuggling is good. I said we should arrest them and convict them.
This is like just, again, just like they're weird. Like they can't think. They can't absorb new information and go, gee, that's a thought I hadn't had. Maybe pardoning drug smugglers is not a good way to stop drug smuggling. How do I know? I don't know what. I don't know. How do I know what? Nonsense. Okay. Do you have proof of that? Proof of what? And not one of these tiny boats can make it all the way to America. So, like, guys, if I'm like a few minutes behind on the comments, so when you just like use random prepositions, I'm not going to know. I'm trying to get to your questions and answer them. But if you're like, you got to like be specific. Like, tell me what you are trying to ask, and like read the sentence back and make sure it makes sense. Like, at least make it so that I can like read it and know what you're talking about and then answer it. And not one of these tiny boats can make it all the way to America without refueling 10 to 100 times. Some of those can have a pretty good range. I don't know if that many times is right, but there's like, they have their typical routes that they take. Like, they'll go to Trinidad and Tobago, and then they'll go from Trinidad and Tobago to, another island, and then they'll, like they island hop up to here. So I mean, like, yes, there are boats that smuggle narcotics into America from Argentina. They're not fishermen. You don't know that. Like, this is based on what? Do you know they're not fishermen? Like, their families say they're fishermen. But Idaho Life 4 somehow knows that they're not fishermen. Like, how do you know? How do you know? Tell me their names. Tell me who they are. You don't know who they are, so how do you know that they're not fishermen? It doesn't mean that at all, what you're talking about. Do you know how statistical data works? Yes, I know how statistical data works. Do you know how statistical data works? That's exactly what it means. If you have a 50% chance of flipping a coin and coming up heads, then each time you flip it, the chances of getting heads every time goes down. So the first time it would be 1 and 2, the second time it would be 1 and 4, the third time it would be 1 and 8. And so the same thing applies. If each time of getting a ship right is 75%, getting it right 70 or 22 times in a row, your chances are like 1 and or like 0.0014%, something like that. Extremely small. So I do know how I took statistics in college. I know how statistics work. Do you know how statistics work? Like, please elaborate to me how you get something right that you have a 75% chance of getting right 22 times in a row. Like, since you're the one that apparently knows how statistics work, can you explain to me what you know that every statistician in the world doesn't? Okay, reminds me of drone strikes on Syria. Again, drone strikes in Syria were with actual terrorist organizations that actually had terrorist activity. Covered this early in the show. Maybe you weren't there. But yes, actual terrorists exist, and we should fight actual terrorists that are actual combatants, that are actually trying to kill Americans. But that does not mean that anybody that you designate a terrorist organization magically becomes a terrorist organization. Lies, they all had drugs on board. Again, you have no idea what you're talking about. You have no way of knowing that. There's zero evidence to show that. You can say that, and Pete Hegseth can say that, but nobody has presented any evidence. And when we've suspected that people have had drugs on board and boarded the ships, we only get it right 75% at the time. So what do you know that the people that actually do this for a living don't know? What makes you so certain that you're willing to risk somebody else's life? Cowards fail to verify suppositions, not our nation. Democrats are not the party of love. Okay. We're not the ones that are like, I don't even know what this is supposed to mean. Like, why? What is the point of saying that? Are Republicans the party of love? Like, who says anybody is the party of love? We're not talking about which party is the party of love. We're talking about Donald Trump is killing people. He's murdering people. And you're sitting there trying to come across as being like the big Christian here. Thou shalt not kill. That is a war crime. It's mostly about oil, but America is occupied by Israel and they hate pro-Palestinian voices. You know, that's, like I said, I got into this, and like when I got into it and I really started trying to understand what is the Palestinian perspective, I realized the Americans do not understand this at all. This is entirely about their land, the Palestinians' land being taken from them over since like 1850, since the 1850s it started. I think there were like 400 Jews living in the entire area now known as Israel and Palestine and in 1850s. Then the Ottoman Empire started changing their land laws, and not saying that the Jews that were buying the land were doing anything wrong, but they started buying land because they were getting persecuted in Europe. And so then they started moving in, and over time and persecution and a lot of other things, the land became Israel. Then there was the Nakba, which was like the Trail of Tears for Palestinians, to make it easy for people that don't understand it or never heard of it. And they've just been getting pushed and pushed and pushed further and further out of the area that used to be theirs. This is land that Palestinians were farming for thousands of years. That all of a sudden somebody comes up and says, hey, this is my land now. And so there is a Palestinian side of this conversation that Americans aren't even aware of. But like, to just not get distracted here. If you say 50% of the time, doesn't that mean that you win? And yes, you would probably get a coin 50% of the time if it's 50-50. Your chances of getting a coin right, like if a chance of calling it heads, of it coming up heads 10 times in a row, would be 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024. Your chances of getting 10 heads in a row is 1 in 1024. Each time the randomness happens, the chance of coming up with the same result consecutively, it's still 50% for each toss, but to get 10 tosses in a row, your chances are 1 in 1054. One of those is going to come up tails, like about 1 in 1000 times, at least 1 in 1000 times. And that's the way probabilities work. So the chances of getting something right, that 75% chance of getting right 22 times in a row, are extremely small. Larry Babylon, I don't even know what that means. I don't believe that they're bombing boats. They're bombing boats that they think that there's drug smugglers on. This is all supposition. And this is one reason why we need to actually board the boat and arrest people. Like, we can't go, well, I just believe it because they told me to. The family members of some of the people have said, no, they were just fishermen. Your belief is kind of irrelevant. This is why things like rule of law exists. This is why you actually have to prove things before you kill people. And yes, again, fishermen do drive high-end speedboats. Again, I've gone through this now 3 times. This administration is full of bullies and cowards. Okay, how many boats left and were bonded because they weren't sure? The question is irrelevant. There were, how many boats left and were bombed because they weren't sure? I don't know. They don't release the numbers for the boats they don't bomb. But that's not the point. The point is that 75% of the time they board a ship, they get it wrong. 75% of the time that they think there's drugs on a ship, they are not drugs on the ship. They're not just bombing or boarding ships they don't think are drugs on them. They're boarding the ships. They believe there are drugs on them. So 75% of the time they think that there are drugs on the ship, they get it wrong. I don't know how, math, this is math. Okay. Golden State Warriors votes. Oh, probably the Thunder. She called us Magus. Hi. Lolly, they admitted it. Warriors, you are literally someone who doesn't have the first clue. Okay. But at the same time, you just can only insult. You can't actually articulate an intelligent response. You just you don't understand how statistics work. I explained to you 3 separate times how statistics work, and you still don't get it. No verification on intel. They have not released any actual intelligence to prove that there were drugs on any of those boats. They should. Jimmy Butler is a traitor. Jimmy Butler, man. I love Jimmy Butler. Those boats are too small to smuggle anything. No, they're designed to carry. They actually have pretty large holes that are under it that actually carry a lot of capacity. I mean, the fish like I said, fishing boats and drug smuggling boats, they have the same basic. A lot of the same basic reasoning goes into both. Like, you want something that's fast. For drugs, you need them to get away. For fish, you want to get back to, if you 300 miles out from shore, you want to get back to shore first. So both need high speeds and certain conditions. Both need big holes. One, if you go fishing, you don't want to catch 2 fish and then go back. You don't drive out 300 miles to just turn around and go back. So you need a big hole to store the fish. With drugs, the whole idea is to store the cocaine. With both, you want to have them relatively lightly manned because that leaves more space and weight for the fish and or drugs. So a lot of the things that are in common. So, and then the drugs boats, they actually want to look like fishing boats because it makes it like if they had big red pirate flags that said I'm smuggling drugs on them, then it would make things easy. But they're trying to look like fishing boats. So it's really not that easy to tell the difference. Hi, Resistance Giddy, you're back. In order to know statistics. No, you wouldn't have to know how many were bonded. I don't even know what you mean by being bonded. 75% of the time that they think, the set that we're looking at here is, these are boats that the Coast Guard thinks that there are drugs on. It is not. 75% of the boats in the Caribbean are not smuggling drugs. 75% of the boats that they think there are drugs on, that's the set that we're dealing with. I don't know how much more clear I can get than that. That's the set of the set that they think that the ones. Do you think that there's drugs on boats that they're not boarding? I'm talking about the ones that they're boarding, not the ones they're bombing. Why do you think they're boarding boats that they don't think are drugs on them? Are they bored? He got mad. He didn't insult people. I didn't say, so you call me name. I will take Trump's no due process for illegals over Harris, no Democrat process. Okay. So you're a racist. How did Democrats govern better? Well, this is too broad a question to ask, and it is relevant. I mean, it's like I could answer, but it'd take like 3 more shows. What's the crime rate in California right now? Irrelevant. MAGA is a cult. I know you're defending MAGA. James, you've been conned. You called MAGA mental, Joyce. Can you give some info to support your position regarding intel on the bombs? The Coast Guard, every time that they board a boat, they keep track of it. They don't just like forget about it afterwards. 75% of the time, out of like the 1,300 times. Well, no, last year, 77% of the boats they boarded, they actually found drugs on. And that was actually a record in terms of, that was the highest percentage. So I'm just using 75% as easy math. All right. They do not always get it right. 1 in 4 times they get it wrong. And they're using the exact same intel that they're using on bombing these boats. They actually probably have a little bit more intel because they're actually, as a visual confirmation of things. So they're not seeing anything on the drones and in person. Or they're not seeing anything just with drones that they wouldn't be seeing with drones and in person. You follow me? Like, sometimes the Coast Guard is wrong. And that means that some of these boats are not actually carrying drugs. Now, some may be, but even if they are, that does not mean that drug smuggling just became a capital offense. And it also does not mean that you can just bomb all the boats on the suspicion that some might be carrying drugs. It is not a known fact that any of these boats were carrying drugs. There has not been any cocaine recovered from any of the bombings. None. Chemtrails are fake. Facts are, well, I mean, they're not fake. Chemtrails are just a weird conspiracy. Facts are just temporary truths. Anyone claiming? Okay, so that's quite an answer. This Blape has too much free time, unemployed. The fools defending Trump's crime are trying to square a circle. Yes, you are an ignorant troglodyte. So, troglodyte. You learned a new word. Do you have a calendar? Was that your word for the day, Idaho Life? Or is that something that you got called by a liberal and looked it up? That was the admin's goal all along. Rumsfeld engineered it. Yeah. Talking about the Iraq war. Cool stuff. Orange man in White House approval dropped to 36%. I can't believe 36% are still supporting him. The troglodyte can't even pronounce troglodyte. Listen to him read. He sound like read. See, so this where listen to him read, and he sound like if 5 years old. Okay. Yeah. Maybe next time type a coherent sentence. Chemtrails above us this week. Are you? Okay, bye, Cheryl. Thanks for joining. You are stupid, can't read, and liberal retards. If you do, it's you, dude. Venezuela sitting on top. So more about Venezuela. Learn English or get out of the country. Literate old men ruined this country. Okay. Welfare starters. Okay. I'm a dumbass. All right. Okay. Sorry, I'm running out of time here. Man, there's a lot of comments. So, let me just kind of wrap up a little bit here and come to the conclusion of all this. We are hurting our efforts to stop drug trafficking. That's the main thing that I think we need to really understand here, is that we're hurting our efforts to stop drug trafficking. Like, instead of boarding these boats and confiscating the drugs and flipping the traffickers, we're just blowing them out of the water. We're poisoning the water for the marine life. We're destroying our evidence. We're destroying our allies, our relationship with our allies that are sharing information with us, that were sharing information with us. So you put it all together. We've probably murdered at least 83 people. We've definitely murdered at least 2 people that are war crimes. Even if you accept that all of the legal yoga that goes behind the first strike, there is no legal yoga that gets you past the second strike. That was just straight up war crimes. The idea that these are unlawful combatants or whatever is a fiction entirely made up by the right. That's a distinction that does not exist. There is no such thing. The Geneva Conventions only allow for civilians and combatants. If they're civilians, you murdered them. If they are combatants, you committed a war crime. There's no third choice. There's no, oh, well, we said you're unlawful combatants, therefore we can just murder you. Out of combat means out of combat. It doesn't matter who you are. People have been given the death penalty for this. Even according to U.S. law, it's not just like when you talk about the Geneva Conventions, you can't just dismiss it, because the U.S. law on war crimes says that if you violate the Geneva Conventions, then you are committing a war crime. And if somebody dies as a result of you violating the Geneva Conventions, you can get the death penalty. This is not me saying this. This is the U.S. law. Look up the law on war crimes. Pete Hegseth's war crime is punishable by death. If he, really didn't know what was happening, which I do not believe. And if you believe, you're probably gullible enough to vote for Trump 3 times. Is a chemical weapon considered a weapon of mass destruction? Technically, yes. Keep it moving. I don't even know what mass structure. Are you a weapon of mass destruction? Is that what you were trying to say? You must be doing like speech to text. But cocaine is not a chemical weapon. Cocaine is a chemical. It's not a weapon. They have radar. They have radar when they board the ships. And they get it wrong 75% of the time. Okay, Democrats are basically Republicans, but gay. Why are you stroking it, MAGA? Want an ignorant comment about Harris District? Yeah. It's like they just say things. I mean, sometimes it just feels like that. You're just saying things, dude. You're not actually engaging in conversation where your brain reviews new information and then thinks about it and then responds to it, like where we could have an adult conversation. I would love to have an adult conversation with a MAGA, but it doesn't seem there are any adult MAGAs to have a conversation with. See, only idiot narco. Okay, but why are you pardoning them? Why are you okay with them being pardoned? And they're not narco terrorists. You don't even Like all of this, it's just like you're so callous. So like just say it. You're okay with people being murdered if they're brown. Who said anything about Desert Storm? Nobody mentioned Desert Storm. And it's like, what did you really you must be like you learned the new word on your calendar, and if you use it 3 times in one day, you remember it forever. Right. That's why due process matters. I wish we had more people that would just understand that. It's that simple. They had intended to evade in the first administration. What, Kelly? Why are you using all the baby oil? I don't even know what that means. There's, if you want to know the connection between the first Gulf invasion and the second Gulf invasion, look up Project for the New American Century. There is a connection there. Some people were mad that we didn't take all the oil the first time. We stopped when we pushed them back into Iraq and wanted to get the oil. And those people were people like Donald Rumsfeld. So they wrote a white paper. They said if there's another tragedy like this, if there's some sort of terrorist attack or something, we should blame it on Iraq, and then we should go in and use that as a pretext to invade Iraq, which is exactly what they did. And it's like people like Paul Wolfowitz and Donald Rumsfeld and a lot of the key people that were around Bush 2 and were around Bush 1. But running out of time, so won't go into all that. Somebody keeps deleting my comments. Okay, that one didn't get deleted. Republicans are closeted gays. And probably YouTube algorithm. I don't like using gays as an insult. I'm not gay. I have gay friends. I don't see anything wrong with being gay. I don't understand why people think it's an insult. And it is because you are a tart and have black parents because you're adopted. Apostrophe R-E. Again, if you're going to insult people's intelligence, learn how to use apostrophes. Is this a liberal live stream? Yes. You really need to be better informed. What do you know about the Iran connection? That it's irrelevant. Okay. Well, and like I said earlier, you've got a lot of fishermen that aren't going out right now to fish because they don't want to get bombed out of their water. And so you have entire fishing communities right now that are suffering because there is no fishing. So another insult that just from another guy that appears to be, you ever notice that like you hardly ever see MAGAs that have selfies of themselves in their sunglasses in their car? Is that because they always live in their cars? I don't understand. Why do you think that you're owning somebody with a comment like that and with a face like that? Does anyone remember the Gulf of Tonkin? Yes. Good point. That's actually a really good point. It's not like the government would ever gaslight us about violence, right? Like we have your wife get in the boat type of situation. I don't know. There hasn't been any indication of that. Imagine being pulled over by law enforcement and they shoot you dead under this. They don't even shoot you dead or pull you over. They just pull out a rocket launcher and shoot your car as you're driving down the highway. Trevor, they were cartel drug runners. Prove it. Like that. Isn't that the whole point of like having trials and stuff like that. And again, if you're so worried about cartel drug runners, why are you okay with Donald Trump pardoning Juan Orlando Hernandez? Why? Why? You sit there and you're just like bragging about being a lemming. I remember the Gulf of Tonkin, actually. I was alive but very young. Yeah, that's the thing that I was too. I was just like a few years old maybe. But I don't remember it when it happened. I remember learning about it in college. If the Biden Harris Obama regime did this. No, we wouldn't. And that's the thing, is like we could actually criticize Biden. I criticized Biden for folding to the for not supporting the union in the trail strike and the railroad strike. Like I can, but you would probably never criticize anything Trump did. You're the one that's literally sitting here defending him murdering people. But somehow it's about the liberals not being able to criticize Biden. Okay. You Democrat losers are pathetic. Okay, Trump. If it was Sentinel, there would be dead fish. No, there probably. I mean, there's going to be dead fish if there's cocaine. Also, that's what I was saying. It's hurting the wildlife, the marine life. It actually is damaging to them. Obama murdered 300. No, he didn't. Kelly Scaletta, this beta male. Okay. Look at you with your little cap on. So tough. Ooh. But you wrestle with your cat and think you're tough. Okay. You minority loser Democrats are pathetic. True. Okay. The strike was under. There were drone strikes under Obama. There were, again, Trump's first 4 years, there were more strikes under Trump than there were under 8 years under Obama. And I'm not against drone strikes. Against drone strikes targeting civilians. Like, again, there is a difference between a drone strike against ISIS, and a drone strike against a drug cartel. Go back, watch the whole thing. I know you came here late. I don't want to re-go through the same things that I've already presented. Go back and watch the whole thing. If you have questions, you're free to come back to me. But yes, I have never said drone strikes are bad. The cartels have they do not have a designated terrorist. They have been designated a terrorist organization. That does not mean they are terrorists. If I say that Donald Trump is a potato, he does not become a potato. You can't designate somebody something they are and make them that thing. They do not have a political agenda. That's what makes a terrorist organization a terrorist organization. And they aren't combatants. They weren't combating. They were driving a boat. So I'm not wrong. You need to look up the law. So more false dichotomy. So I'm just scrolling through and looking at seeing if there's anything intelligent. Because I've only got a couple of minutes left, just scrolling through to see if there's anything intelligent. Yeah. All the economic indicators are worse for the guy that's going to save our record spending. I have no idea what that is. I've got a bunch of comments here. Sorry, I can't keep track of every. I'm barely keeping up as it is. Okay. So, all right. Obviously, white people created mind. Okay. That sounds very Nazi of you. Why? I don't think I've canceled anybody. You ever heard of the Consumer Index reports? Yeah. I don't know if you're talking to me or to somebody else. The Consumer Index reports are actually really, really bad. I think lower than they were during the Great Recession, or the lowest since the Great Recession or something. They're really bad. The Consumer Confidence Index, I think. Anyway, all right. Thank you all for joining. Even the MAGAs, you've kept things lively. I will talk to you tomorrow.